My husband's parents took my daughter to the lake and left her in a boat alone. They thought it'd be character building. She drifted off, screaming for help. Why should we babysit your brat? My mother-in-law snapped. 8 days later, my daughter whispered a secret that made me shake with rage. My name's Clara. I'm 41, and before everything happened, I would have told you my life was normal. Nothing flashy. Nothing messy. I lived in a modest 2-story house in Traverse City, Michigan. Worked as a nurse. Married to Caleb for almost 10 years. We had one daughter together, Isla. She's 9 now, sweet and quiet, a little bookish, just like I was at that age. I didn't grow up in a close-knit family, so when I met Caleb and he talked about his parents with such reverence, I envied it. I thought I was stepping into something I'd never had: Sunday dinners, advice I didn't ask for, in-laws who'd treat me like one of their own. I was wrong. So wrong. His mother, Lorraine, was the kind of woman who turned everything into a lesson. Tough love was her favorite phrase. She used it like a bat. Cold, controlling, and always with that smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Jude, his dad, didn't say much. He just nodded and followed. If Lorraine said the sky was green, Jude would grab a paintbrush. It started small. The first time she watched Isla for a few hours, she sent her back home with a note. A literal note. It read, "You need to stop babying her." She asked for help tying her shoes. "You're raising a codependent child." I rolled my eyes, tossed it in the trash, and told Caleb. He laughed. "That's just my mom," he said. That became the excuse for everything. We don't talk like that in our house, but when Lorraine scolded Isla for crying when she fell, Caleb just shrugged. It's how she was raised. I should have said something stronger back then. But I let it go. We all do, right? In the name of peace. For the sake of family. Until it's not just passive comments. Until it becomes something bigger. Last July, Caleb suggested we let Isla spend the weekend at his parents' lake house in Charlevoix. They've been asking for some one-on-one time with her, he said. You could use a break. We could use a weekend. A part of me froze. Something about the idea didn't sit right. I didn't trust Lorraine, not alone, not for 3 days. But I also didn't want to be the difficult wife. The overprotective mom. So I said yes. I packed Isla's weekend bag like it was a survival kit: snacks, her stuffed rabbit, sunblock, even printed instructions in the front pocket of her backpack. I kissed her 3 times, like always, and told her to call me if she needed anything. She gave me this nervous little smile, the kind kids give when they're trying to be brave. I should have listened to my gut. Saturday afternoon came. I called Lorraine's phone. No answer. Called again Sunday morning. Still nothing. When she finally picked up, she said they'd just gotten back from a little adventure. She's fine. She learned a lot this weekend, Lorraine said, in that clipped voice of hers. We believe in raising strong girls. I didn't even know what that meant. When Isla got home, something was off. She didn't run into my arms. She barely looked up. Her lips were cracked. Her cheeks were flushed. She didn't talk. She just shuffled to her room and curled up with Hops, her stuffed rabbit, like she was shielding herself from the world. I asked Caleb what the HLL happened. She's probably just tired, he said, brushing it off. My mom said she had a great time. But that night, Isla woke up screaming. The next night, too. And the next. Nightmares. Crying in her sleep. She started wetting the bed again. She barely ate. Wouldn't talk. Her eyes looked haunted, and I don't use that word lightly. I called our pediatrician. Booked a therapist. The soonest appointment was in 8 days. And then, on the 8th night, while brushing her hair after a bath, she told me. She said it so softly, I almost missed it. Grandma made me go in the boat. Alone. My brush stopped mid-stroke. What do you mean, sweetheart? She said I needed to be brave. So she pushed the boat into the lake. Said I should figure out how to row back. She said no one was coming even if I screamed. And she did scream. She screamed until her throat hurt. She didn't know how far she'd gone. She only remembered the trees looking smaller and the water getting wider. They watched her. From the porch. She could see them. They didn't move. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because she said you'd be mad. That you'd say I need to grow up. My knees buckled. That night, I didn't tell Caleb. I didn't sleep. I just sat in my car with the engine running, the dashboard lights glowing on my pale hands. At sunrise, I drove to their lake house. Lorraine answered the door in a silk robe, holding her coffee like this was any other morning. She told me, I said. Her eyes didn't even flinch. About the boat. She's fine, Lorraine said, brushing past me like I was asking about the weather. She needed that. That girl has no grit. You pushed her into open water, I said. She could have drowned. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. We watched her the whole time. She screamed for help. She needed to learn she's stronger than she thinks. That's when I realized this woman didn't see a child. She saw a project. And I had handed over my daughter to someone who believed fear was medicine. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just turned and left. Drove straight to the police station and filed a report. They couldn't arrest her. No bruises. No physical harm. But they filed it. I documented everything. Called Isla's therapist. Took notes. Recorded everything she said. Caleb didn't take it seriously. He told me I was turning this into a spectacle. I told him he had a choice, stand up to them or we're done. He didn't even hesitate. He chose his mother. I didn't leave that night. Not physically. But something in me did. I started sleeping in Isla's room. Partly to be close, partly to avoid sharing a bed with someone I no longer recognized. Caleb thought it was temporary. He tried to fix things with flowers and forced apologies, even offered to talk to Mom, but never once did he say she was wrong. Because deep down, he didn't believe she was. To him, it was a misunderstanding. She meant well, he said. She was just trying to toughen Isla up. That phrase, it kept coming back. Like some kind of disease that ran in the family. Toughen up. Be strong. Stop crying. How many times had I heard Lorraine say that to her own son, to me, to Isla? How many times had she dressed cruelty up as care? I started preparing for the long haul. Called my sister, Laura, who lived in Ann Arbor. Packed a few bags for Isla and me. Told Caleb I needed space. I'm not taking her away, I said. I'm protecting her. Until you figure out whose side you're on. He didn't fight me. He didn't cry or beg. He just stood there, like someone who'd already accepted the outcome but didn't have the courage to own it. At Laura's, things were quiet. Peaceful. Her kids, teenagers, played board games with Isla. She started laughing again. Sleeping better. Not great, but better. The therapist session started. Isla was hesitant at first. She sat with her knees pulled up on the couch, gripping hops like a lifeline. But the therapist, Dr. Ames, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s, had a calm that soothed both of us. After the third session, Dr. Ames asked to speak to me alone. She's still reliving it, she said. But what's concerning isn't just what happened. It's that she believed she deserved it. I didn't understand. She told me her grandma said she cries too much. That crying makes her weak. That you're making her soft. That if she doesn't get stronger, she'll grow up useless. I felt my nails dig into my palms. I had to concentrate on breathing. Then Dr. Ames added something else. She told me your husband was in the house. That he saw it happen. And didn't stop it. That part shattered me. I knew he hadn't been the one who pushed the boat. I knew Lorraine was the architect of this little lesson. But to hear that Caleb saw it, watched his daughter scream and didn't do a damn thing? That was the end of the line. When I confronted him, I expected resistance. Denial. But instead, he said something I'll never forget. She's fine, Clara. She's not scarred for life. You're the one making this a trauma. That was the moment I stopped being scared of breaking our marriage. I realized it was already broken. He just didn't care enough to pick up the pieces. I filed for divorce the next morning. The legal battle that followed was slow and grueling. Caleb fought for joint custody, of course. His lawyer argued that it was an isolated incident, that his parents had made a poor judgment call, and that I was trying to alienate him from his child. They said I was unstable, overprotective, emotional. Funny how women are always emotional when they're just trying to protect their kids. But I came prepared. I had the therapist's report. I had Islah's statements. I had the police report, even if it didn't lead to charges, it documented everything. I also had something else, time. Time to think. Time to feel the full weight of what I'd ignored for years. Because the boat wasn't the beginning. It was the culmination of years of subtle, insidious behavior. Of letting things slide. Of believing that family deserves access simply because they share DNA. No more. The judge granted me primary custody. Caleb was given supervised visitation twice a month at a local center. Lorraine and Jude weren't granted any visitation rights at all. They tried, though. Lorraine had the audacity to file for grandparents' rights in October. Her lawyer made it sound like I was withholding Islah out of spite. That I was cutting them off because of one small disagreement. She even submitted birthday cards and old photos as evidence of her closeness to Islah. What they didn't count on was Dr. Ames testifying. She explained, in no uncertain terms, the emotional damage Lorraine had inflicted. The fear Islah felt. The regression in her development. The bedwetting. The screaming. She's not safe with them, Dr. Ames said calmly. And she knows it. The request was denied. Still, Lorraine didn't let up. She sent emails. Left voicemails. Even mailed Islah a Christmas gift in December, a toy boat. I didn't open it. I didn't show Islah. I reported it to my lawyer, added it to the restraining order request, and changed our address the following month. It's been months now, and while things are calmer, they're not normal. Islah still asks questions. Why does Daddy only see me at that place now? Did I do something bad? I answer with honesty, but carefully. I tell her, you didn't do anything wrong. Grown-ups make mistakes sometimes. And it's my job to keep you safe, even from people we love. That part's the hardest. Teaching her that love isn't always safe. That sometimes people hurt us in the name of helping. That family isn't a free pass. She's starting to understand it, slowly. The other day, she said, I don't like how Grandma made me feel. I don't want to see her again. And I told her, you don't have to. Ever. We're learning together now, how to heal, how to trust again, how to move forward without minimizing what happened. But sometimes I still wonder. What if Islah had never told me? What if she'd carried that memory like a stone in her pocket for years? What if I had kept trusting Caleb because it was easier than facing the truth? That truth still wakes me up at night. Not the lake. Not the boat. Not the screaming. It's the realization that I almost didn't believe her. That I almost told her to be brave and get over it, just like Lorraine would have. That's what haunts me. Because if I hadn't listened. I don't even want to finish that sentence. There's something people don't tell you about surviving something that doesn't leave bruises. The world keeps moving like nothing happened. No casseroles get dropped off. No friends call to check in. You're just expected to go to work, smile politely at the barista, send emails, make dinner, and pretend like your world didn't tilt on its axis because someone shoved your child into it with no life vest and called it love. It took me a while to understand that Lorraine wasn't just cruel, she was calculated. And Caleb, he wasn't blind. He was complicit. The weekend after the custody hearing, Caleb called me. He wanted to talk. Not about Isla. Not about how to co-parent. No, he wanted to talk about me. He said, I don't recognize you anymore. And he was right. I had changed. I wasn't soft anymore. I wasn't willing to make excuses. I wasn't going to pretend that his family's dysfunction was just how they were. I didn't say much. I just let him talk. Let him say things like you've turned her against me, and she's afraid of everything now. But I knew the truth. Isla wasn't afraid of everything. She was afraid of them. That spring, something shifted in her. She started asking questions with more confidence. Wanting to understand what happened, why it happened. Her therapist said it was a good sign, kids need to process in layers. The questions come when they feel safe enough to ask. One night, while we were coloring together, she looked up and asked, "Do you think Grandma loves me?" I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know how. So I said, "I think Grandma loves the idea of a strong little girl. But she doesn't understand what strength really looks like." Isla didn't say anything. She just kept coloring. But I watched her hand relax a little. Later, she told her therapist, "My mom doesn't lie to me. Not even when it's hard." That was the day I stopped doubting myself. Caleb kept pushing for more time. He said he wanted overnights eventually. Said the supervised visits were demeaning. He called it a punishment. I reminded him, through the court, that it wasn't a punishment. It was protection. He never admitted what he did, or didn't do, on that dock. Never said he was sorry for standing still while our daughter screamed from the middle of a lake. And when I think about it, that silence, his silence, hurt more than Lorraine's twisted philosophies. Because Lorraine was always going to be who she was. But Caleb? He was supposed to choose us. He didn't. Still, I showed up. To every supervised visit. I sat in the lobby while Isla went inside. She never cried, never clung to me, but every time she came out, she looked relieved. That kind of relief, it's not what a child should feel after seeing their father. It's strange, the things that stick with you. A few weeks ago, Isla was organizing her closet and found her old weekend bag, the one I'd packed for the lake house. She unzipped it and pulled out a sun hat I'd bought her. It still had sand on it. She held it up and said, "I remember this. I wore it that day." I sat down on the floor next to her. "Do you remember everything?" I asked gently. She nodded. Slowly. Then she said something that made my heart ache all over again. "I remember being scared. But I also remember hearing birds. And I remember thinking, if I don't yell loud, they won't know I'm here. So I screamed louder." She looked at me and smiled. I think I saved myself. I hugged her so tight she squeaked. And she had saved herself. Not because she screamed, but because she told me. She trusted me enough to share something terrifying. And I chose to believe her. I won't lie, there were moments I almost didn't. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't trust myself. Because when someone gaslights you for years, when they convince you that you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too soft, you start questioning every instinct. That's what Lorraine did. What Caleb helped her do. They didn't just isolate Isla in a boat. They isolated me in a house. A house where I was told to calm down, to let it go, to pick my battles. A house where I was made to feel like I was overreacting when I was just reacting to something real. I'm not in that house anymore. Neither is Isla. We live in a smaller place now, just outside of Ann Arbor. It's quieter, older, a little worn in the corners, but full of light. We hang paintings on the wall that Isla makes in art class. We grow tomatoes in pots on the porch. We're building something soft. And safe. And whole. But some days, when Isla's at school and the house is silent, I still hear echoes of that voice in my head, the one that says, "You're making this bigger than it is." And then I remember my daughter, clutching her stuffed rabbit, whispering what Lorraine did. And I remember that sun hat, still covered in lake sand. And the silence turns into strength. Not the kind Lorraine believed in. Not the hard, cold kind that shames tears and calls fear weakness. But the kind that holds you upright when you're shaking. The kind that whispers, "You did the right thing." Even when no one claps. Even when no one sees. Even when the people closest to you tell you you're wrong. Especially then. It's been just over a year since the lake. That's how I track time now, before and after the lake. Some parents talk about milestones with their kids like birthdays, first words, or braces. I talk about it like storm systems. Before the boat. After the whisper. During the custody hearings. Every now and then, Caleb texts me. It's always formal. Always strategic. Never about Isla's favorite snacks or how she's doing in school. It's about appearances, about boxes to check. Can I drop off a birthday gift during the next supervised visit? Or, I'd like to petition the court to reevaluate the visitation schedule. The man who used to brush our daughter's hair with shaky hands on her first day of preschool now refers to her like a bullet point in a legal document. It's easier for him, I think. To pretend this is a custody issue and not a consequence of watching your daughter scream for help while your mother taught her a lesson. That's the part he still hasn't addressed. And I think that's what hurts Isla most. He never said he was sorry. She hasn't asked to call him once since the visit started. Not once. And I never force it. I won't be the parent who teaches her that love means effort only from one side. But she still brings him up in small ways, usually in safe places, like bedtime. A few weeks ago, after we finished reading, she said quietly, "Do you think Daddy was scared, too?" That question gutted me. Because she's still trying to make sense of it, still trying to protect someone who didn't protect her. That's what kids do. They fold their pain into paper cranes and hand them to the people who hurt them, hoping they'll recognize it. I said, maybe. Maybe he didn't know how to speak up. She nodded like she understood. Then rolled over and went to sleep. I didn't. Therapy is a constant part of our lives now. Not just for Isla, but for me too. Dr. Ames helped me realize how deep the manipulation had gone. How many things I dismissed over the years. Like the time Lorraine told me I wasn't mother material because I didn't want to let Isla cry it out as a baby. Or when Jude told me it was selfish to work nights at the hospital and expect Caleb to help with bedtime. Or when Caleb said I took things too personally every time I stood up for our daughter. It was all bricks and a wall I didn't see being built around me, until I had to climb over it to save my child. And it's not just emotional. The trauma echoes physically, too. Sometimes Isla flinches when she hears a door slam. Sometimes I do. Sometimes she whispers questions instead of saying them out loud, like she's still unsure if her voice is allowed to fill the room. We work on that. Slowly. We use affirmations. Not cheesy ones, but real ones. We say things like, "I am allowed to take up space. My feelings are not too big. I am safe here." And she believes me now when I say it. That's something. We ran into Jude once, at a grocery store, of all places. I saw him first. He was by the deli, alone, squinting at a row of potato salads like his life depended on it. I tried to turn around, to steer Isla toward the cereal aisle, but she saw him. She froze. He noticed us a second later. His face flickered, something between guilt and fear, and then he raised a hand. Not a wave. Just a gesture. Isla didn't move. She stared at him for a long second. Then said, quietly but clearly, "Let's go." And we did. We left a half-full cart behind. We drove to another grocery store 15 minutes away. I didn't care. I would have driven an hour if she needed it. Later that night, when we were cooking together, she said, "Grandpa looked sad." I said, "Maybe he is." She thought about it for a moment, then said, "That doesn't mean I have to talk to him, right?" "No," I said. "It doesn't." She went back to stirring the spaghetti sauce like we hadn't just discussed something that would have taken me months to say at her age. She's braver than I was. Sometimes I wonder if Lorraine feels anything at all. She hasn't reached out in months. Not since the restraining order was finalized. The last thing she ever said to me was in the courthouse hallway, after her petition for visitation was denied. She looked at me like I'd ruined her life and hissed, "You've made her weak. You've made her soft. She's going to grow up spineless." I didn't respond. I didn't even blink. But I wish I could go back to that moment now. Not to scream. Not to lecture. Just to say, no. She's going to grow up safe. And that's more than you ever gave your own son. Because that's what this has always been about. Not just a lake. Not just a boat. But about breaking a cycle. About choosing softness in a world that punishes it. About raising a daughter who knows that strength isn't silence, and survival isn't proof that something was okay. It's proof it wasn't. I still have nightmares sometimes. Not of the boat, but of arriving too late. Of Isla vanishing into the water before I knew what had happened. Of silence. Of never hearing her whisper what Lorraine did. But then I wake up. And I see her, splayed across the bed with hops tucked under her chin, mouth open, hair wild, drooling on the pillow like any 9-year-old should. And I remember, we're okay. Not fixed. Not untouched. But okay. And every time I look at her, I remember why I stayed quiet for so long. And why I never will again. The first real moment of peace came not from a courtroom or a therapy session. It came from Isla. We were at a small art festival in downtown Ann Arbor. Spring had just cracked open like an egg, everything smelled like rain and sidewalk chalk. Isla was walking a few steps ahead of me, holding a smoothie in one hand and her sketchpad in the other. She stopped at a vendor selling hand-pressed clay charms, each one stamped with a word. She turned to me and asked, "Can I get one?" "Pick any you want," I said. She looked over the little bowls, hope. Brave. Wild. Dream. Enough. She chose louder. Later, I asked her why that one. She said, "Because the more I talk, the better I feel." That charm now hangs on her backpack. She taps it when she's nervous. Like a little bell reminding her she's allowed to take up space. It gave me an idea. I started writing everything down. Every email Lorraine ever sent. Every voicemail Caleb left begging for more time but still refusing to acknowledge what happened. Every moment Isla recounted in therapy. Every insult masked as parenting advice. Every manipulation I swallowed for 10 years in that marriage. And then I published it. Not online. Not anonymously. I wrote an op-ed for a local parenting magazine. Small circulation, but real. Under my full name. The title? When Tough Love is Just Abs with a Pretty Name. I didn't name Lorraine or Caleb outright. I didn't have to. But I told the story. I told Isla's story. The boat. The silence. The therapy. The night she whispered the truth. I talked about how emotional abs doesn't always leave bruises, but it leaves evidence, in fear, in regression, in shame a child doesn't have the words for. I ended it with this: my daughter didn't need to be toughened up. She needed to be heard. She needed safety, not silence. She needed a mother who believed her. I thank God every day that I finally became that woman. It went viral. The magazine posted it online, and within 2 weeks, it had over 60,000 shares. Therapists commented. Teachers. Mothers. Grown women who said they were once girls in their own boats. People recognized Lorraine's style all over the country. Even better? Someone sent it to her church. Apparently, she was quite active there. Hosted women's groups. Did charity events. Loved to call herself a mentor to young mothers. I never sent it. I never needed to. The words did the work. She stopped calling. Stopped emailing. And word got back to me, through an old neighbor, that Lorraine had stepped down from all her church roles. Quietly. Without a scene. Apparently, someone had printed my article and passed it around during coffee hour. Jude, I heard, now spends most days at the lake house. Alone. As for Caleb? He still does his twice-a-month visits, but now he's careful. Too careful. Polite. Measured. Like a man who knows one wrong move will unravel the thin thread he's hanging onto. He asked me once, after the article blew up, "Did you write that just to punish us?" And I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "No. I wrote it so I'd never have to explain to Isla one day why I stayed quiet. Because silence was the punishment. For all of us. And breaking it? That was the only justice I could live with. Life is small now. And soft. We grow herbs on the windowsill. Isla paints sunsets with colors no real sky has ever seen. I volunteer with a local organization that supports mothers in high-conflict custody cases. I tell them what I wish someone had told me, that you don't have to bleed to prove you've been hurt. That some families are built with bricks and love, and others are torn down to protect what matters. Isla is thriving. She recently won a regional writing contest for a story about a girl who builds a boat that takes her to a land where no one ever yells, and everyone listens. She named the boat Truth. At the awards ceremony, she looked so proud. Not scared. Not small. Afterward, she hugged me and said, "I think I'm ready to let go of hops soon." I smiled. "Whenever you're ready," I said. And she tapped her little louder charm. That's the sound of healing. Not shouting. Not vengeance. Just a voice, steady and sure, saying, "I survived you." And louder still, "I will never let you do it again."